The Octopus Hitman. Listener discretion advised.
You were adopted as a child, raised by a loving family in a quiet small town. Years later, you search out your birth parents, only to discover your father is a notorious killer. Conflicting thoughts and emotions swirl in your mind. How would you handle such a life-changing revelation?
Welcome to the Octopus Hitman. This is episode 2. To my left, you have James.
Howdy.
And, of course, to my right, he doesn't want me to call him the Digital Diode Man. He wants me to call him Color Commentator, Mr. Mark.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Okay.
That's such a better title.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and talk about
You.
me, and we're going to talk about the adoption.
So I hope you prepared for this because you know all this in your head, but is it good for the listener? Do you have it spelled out? Is it clear?
This is going to be a nightmare for you guys. I do not have it organized at all.
Working with you is always a nightmare.
Right, exactly. So,
I can't wait for this.
okay, but I will tell you, this is all about the adoption and then how this all started. So let's get into it. So first of all, my girlfriend, she plays the lottery every single week. I don't play the lottery. She plays the lottery. And the reason why is because I already won the lottery. I was actually adopted in 1967, and I was adopted by a great couple, and they raised me, and it was a wonderful thing. So that was one of the reasons why I won the lottery. The other reason is because I didn't have any kind of contact with this crazy serial killer guy that we talked about in the first episode, Philip Arthur Thompson. So I was adopted. My dad was a California highway patrolman, and my mom worked as a bookkeeper, and we moved to a small town called Mount Shasta. And Mark, I grew up with you.
Yeah, in high school.
What town were you adopted in?
Well, I was born in San Francisco. So basically, the state of California arranges adoptions. And back then in the 60s, if you think about it, they were all closed adoptions, basically. So you didn't get to know who the child went to, and the adopted parents didn't know who the birth parents were. Back in the 60s, if you were pregnant, this would be a big scandal, right? And she was an unwed mother. Well, of course, there was abortion, but that wasn't really popular in the 60s. And so you would go, quote unquote, visit your sick aunt, or you're going to go to school away for 9 months. And there was a home called the Florence Crittenton Home for Wayward Mothers is basically what it was. And I think they were scattered all over America, or homes like this. So there was one in San Francisco. So my birth mother, she went to this home, had the baby, then they give it to the adopted parents.
And so your adopted parents lived in San Francisco?
At the time, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you do me a favor really quick? Can you name your biological mother's first name?
Yeah, her name was Karen.
And can you name your adopted father and mother's names?
Phil and Charlene.
Okay, I just want to make that clear, because you can start saying their names at that point, and it's not going to get confusing with different mothers and fathers.
Right, exactly. So then my birth mother is Karen, and then, of course, Philip Arthur Thompson. And then my adopted parents were Phil and Charlene. And what the interesting thing about it that I love saying is that, again, I won the lottery. My dad was a cop. He was great. My adopted dad, who I consider my real parent, he was named Philip. He was a cop. He put people in jail, and he was also 6'5". Philip Arthur Thompson, his name was Philip. He was 6'5", and he went to jail. Right? So it's just a really weird coincidence, I suppose, right? So
what made them decide to adopt?
Charlene, my mother, she couldn't have babies. So
Okay.
she always wanted a kid. As a matter of fact, I was adopted. And then by the time I turned 4 years old, we adopted my sister while she was 3 years old.
Okay.
So we have a group of 4 people, my sister and then my parents. Right?
Gotcha.
Both of you had dark hair and blue eyes, which is kind of a rare.
We
feature.
actually look like brother and sister, but we have no blood.
How many times did they try to return you?
Never. I was the perfect child.
I don't believe
They
that.
shut down the adoption agency right after. Oh,
Yeah.
good, he's gone. Let's shut
Yeah,
down.
they moved out of state.
Yeah. So again, a part of the reason why I won the lottery, I grew up in this picturesque town. We got a beautiful mountain, beautiful lake. I got to do things that most kids don't get to do. I'm not athletic at all, but I got
That's
to play.
an understatement.
It's an understatement, right? I mean, if you saw me, I really have the coordination of an 8-year-old.
People were looking at you. They're like, "Oh, Phil, this is your son. This is your son."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill's golf swing is like Tourette's.
Yeah. It's horrible, right? But I played football on a championship team in this little small town, right? I got to be the DJ of the town, right? I was, later, one of my first jobs was being the DJ.
I need to be clear. This town is only 3,500 population.
Exactly. But that's what I got to do. I was in the school play. So were you. We were leads in the school play. We were some of the best singers, some of the best actors. We just did every experience that you've always wanted to have that you don't get to have in a big school. We got.
Did your father ever want you to be a cop?
Oh, he wanted me to be a
And
cop.
you're like, I'm a DJ, Dad.
I think what's more important is what were the leads you played in high school?
I played the Pirate King.
Before that, what was
I didn't play another lead.
you weren't the mayor of Munchkin
I was the
Land.
mayor of Munchkinland, yes. But that's not a lead. But you were the Cowardly Lion,
I was.
right? Okay, so, we got to have these amazing experiences. And if you grew up in the 70s, 80s in this town, it's like growing up in the 60s, 70s, someplace else, because everything was kind of back 10 years. So the fashion was back 10 years. The music was back 10 years. It's just kind of funny, you
It's
know?
beautiful, though. The town is beautiful. And the high school is right at the base of the mountain.
Yeah.
You're looking at one of the tallest mountains in California right at the back door of the high school. And there's water and pine trees just everywhere.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And my dad was a big guy, very well respected. Everybody liked him. Everybody was over at our house. We're having barbecues. I always say this about my dad. It's like all my friends were lining up to see my dad so he could call them an asshole, because that's how he was. He just had this weird sense of humor, but
Yeah, I had
everybody
like
loved
5
him.
nicknames by your dad.
Oh yeah. I was never called by my name. I was always asshole or other words that maybe I shouldn't even say on here, but he would also call me Amos. Everybody was Amos and Chief and that kind of stuff. He was just a great guy. So I grew up, I don't even think I saw my parents argue more than 3 times, and it was like, we got to talk in the bedroom, right? It's like, so it was very healthy. I got a lot of confidence, like all this great stuff. So I avoided all of that. And then, of course, my mother, one of the reasons why she gave me up for adoption is that she couldn't afford it. It's like she was...
How old was she?
She was 21 years old, as well as Philip Arthur Thompson. So now, and by the way, the other thing is my mom told me as soon as I was able to talk, she told me I was adopted. There was no, day when I was 10 or 18. Guess what?
They didn't hide it from you.
Yeah. And so it was always a really healthy conversation, right?
I'm just imagining, see Spot run. See Johnny run. You're adopted.
Yeah. Mom, I'm not your mom.
Right. Yeah.
Don't ever call me that again.
You call me Charlene.
Yeah. So now, fast forward, I am now in college and I am living in Sacramento, and somebody, and I don't even remember who it was. I don't know if it was a friend or somebody who had been adopted, because I'd always say I'm adopted and people would be fascinated by it. And then I was introduced to an institution that helped people with closed adoptions, like if you wanted to find your mother and
Gotcha.
that kind of stuff. Well, I didn't really want to find my mother. I didn't want to find my father, my mother. I wasn't really interested. I had a great set of parents. That
So
I
your
loved.
parents had told you that you were adopted. They never told you anything about your parents because they didn't know.
They didn't know. Nobody knew. So I decided, let's contact this research company, and then let's see what it is. So I got all this information from them. And one thing that I could petition is I could petition the state for unidentified information. And I thought, well, that's perfect because I don't really want to know who my parents are, but it would be really nice to know because when you're adopted, there is a little bit of like the piece of the puzzle is pretty much, not there. You don't know your background. You don't know your health, all that stuff.
Yeah, the health thing's the most important part nowadays.
Yeah,
is understanding what the health situations might be as you get older.
Well, just as you get older, family history, you become an adult and there's things you want to know.
Yeah, for sure. So I petitioned the state or whatever. And then I remember I had this roommate. His name was Brian. And I told him about it. And he's like, yeah, I can't wait to see this and everything. And so I got the package in the mail. And I opened it up, and he was very curious.
Did you secretly hope that your father was an Oakland Raider?
Oh, I was very much convinced that my father was Eddie Van Halen. I mean, I just knew this. I knew it was Eddie Van Halen is who it was. I don't play guitar, but by golly, I know Eddie was my dad. Okay? That's exactly who I thought it was.
It's more like Steve Buscemi.
Yeah, Steve Buscemi, yeah. He's the better looking version of me, right? Anyway, so I open up this package and it's interesting. I got all of this, what, we call non-identifying information, but it was really more of an exit interview when my birth mother sits down with the people at the adoption agency or whatnot. And they ask her a bunch of questions and then they just, type out what that entailed. So I found out things like, she was the oldest of 5 people. I had twin uncles and she had 2 other sisters, that my grandfather, her father, was into planes and he had flown planes in the Air Force and he owned a sporting goods store, and that her mother wasn't in really good mental health and stuff like that. And it was like, wow, this is fascinating. I found out that she was 21 and that the birth father was 21. And I was like, oh, this is great. And then I found out also stuff like in between the time, she was starting to date a guy who did not want to raise somebody else's child. That makes sense.
So your birth father, was it just a one night?
It was just like a one night thing as far as I could tell.
Okay.
This. And so she was like, well, I can't afford the baby and I am seeing this other guy and I just don't know what to do. So I'm giving him up for adoption. So it was okay.
That's a brave thing to do.
It is.
Because it takes a lot to go through, not only with your body, but I can't imagine giving a child up for adoption and wondering, gosh, I hope my child is okay.
Yeah, and I've had people come up to me like, I could never give my child up for adoption. And it's like, well, if you're not in a good place.
Yeah.
And
financially, everything. Right. Do you want the kid to have a chance or no chance?
Exactly. And so she obviously gave me the ultimate chance. So that I've always thanked her for that. And some other things in there, which was kind of bizarre, like the person who was across from her described my mother, said she had blue eyes and a very generous mouth. And I was like, that's an odd adjective to add to this, right? A generous mouth? Like, what does that mean? She has giant big lips.
Was she like a fish?
Yeah,
put a hook in there or what?
That was my picture. Like she had these giant lips and,
maybe she has like a Carly Simon mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
I wonder if that's what attracted Philip Arthur Thompson.
Maybe so. He was like, you have generous lips.
Mouth. Yeah.
But so they asked about my birth father, and she was like, I really don't know much about him. It came down to, what is the father doing? And it was like, well, I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure he is in jail. And as I said jail, I remember a lump got caught in my throat. I couldn't believe it. Like I was just willy-nilly about this, right? And I was like, he's in jail. He's in jail and he's writing bad checks. That's what he's in jail for. And that just blew my whole Eddie Van Halen thing right out of the water, but I was kind of shocked that I got this picturesque, perfect life here. And, there's a little dent in the armor there. I was like, wow. And I shocked myself that it kind of hit me that way, right?
Well,
So-
you're building yourself up to, even if it's not Eddie Van Halen, maybe it's a famous person or rich or something.
Right. So I think I'm 23 at this point. So I get all this information, but it didn't change anything. All I knew is that it was like Central California is what it said that she grew up in and that type of stuff. So I really didn't have that much more. It was just that, okay, now I know my dad is kind of a dirtbag and she couldn't afford me. And so that was the story. And so I was able to tell that much more of that story and people were fascinated by it. But now there were other things that you could do to go try to find it. But really at that point, I wasn't interested and I didn't want to go through all of the paperwork or something that you had to do because it was still, you couldn't get it.
But you did find your mom, your birth mom.
I did. So now fast forward about 5 years, maybe 6 or 7, but I am now married and I have my first son. So my wife at the time, Emily, we have our first son and she starts to ask me questions about like my health history, which like you said,
Right.
it's the big thing. And she's really big on all that stuff. And so I go, well, I don't know. I'm adopted. I have no idea. And I have no identifying information really. And so she was like, well, I really want to know for our son. What if he has a disease or whatever, you know?
It's a little late now.
Let me find that secret hidden envelope that I put away. How would you just?
Right. Well, she was like, well, do you care if I look? And I go, no, don't look. I have no interest in finding my parents. And so if you knew my wife at the time, and you do, it's like she just kept on me.
She is a determined woman.
Yeah, it was Chinese water torture. And now this is like 1996. And 5 days later or something, I was like, fine, go ahead and find them, right? In my mind, I'm thinking, there's no effing way you are going to find my mother.
You are sadly mistaken by 1996.
Yeah. And 1996, it's really, I consider 94 like the birth of the internet. And I know that the internet was around way longer than that, but you started getting these,
Connections.
AOL.
Yes.
And what was the other ones? Prodigy, right?
Yeah.
But AOL is what everybody started jumping on. And she got on AOL. And I'm thinking 36 hours later, she's like, I found your mom. How she did it, and I actually really don't know how she did it, but somehow she got on one of these message boards or whatnot that were way more popular back then than they are now. And she found a person that had a connection to the state. I still remember the email address, but just in case somehow this person gets in trouble, I'm not going to mention the email address. But this person, let's just call her Banana Pop. That's close.
Banana Pop?
Banana Pop was close to the email that she was, okay? So Banana Pop said, listen, I've got 2 people that it could be, and I'm pretty sure it's this one person. And it was driver's license information and where they were located and stuff like that. Well, I looked at both of
In
them.
1967 or now.
Oh, it was just, it was like now, like where they were,
Wow.
who they were, the phone number, where they were now.
What dark web was she on?
Exactly, right? And by the way, I mean, like my ex-wife really should be like a detective or something. She can just find out information. She still does it to this day. It's crazy. Anyway, I get these 2 driver's licenses. Well, one had brown eyes and I knew it wasn't them. And the other one had blue eyes. And I was like, that's gotta be them. And there were other identifying things that I don't remember now, but it was like, oh yeah.
Generous mouth.
She had a generous mouth. I don't know, but there were some other things that we were like, I'm pretty sure this is the person. And so at that point, I was like, okay, now we found her out. That's enough. But my, of course, wife at the time was like,
I need her full medical history.
right. She was like, well, you should call her. And I was like, look, I still don't have any interest. Like, I don't have any interest in
Is she on any medication right now? I need to know.
Exactly. So, I sat on it for a few days and she used every tactic in the world to get me to call her.
You're sleeping on the couch.
Are you ready now? Are you ready now? Are you ready now?
Exactly. Oh, she was using childhood tactics like, you're too scared. You're chicken, right? I swear to God, that's what
Reverse
got
psychology.
me. Yeah, that's exactly what got me. Oh, I'm chicken. A couple of days of I'm chicken. And I finally was like, fine, you want me to call her? I'll go ahead and call her. Okay. So
I'm surprised you're the son of a serial killer falling for that.
I know. I totally fell for it.
Skips a generation.
Good thing.
Yeah.
Good thing.
So I grabbed the phone, and interestingly enough, it was really cool because this organization, they did give advice in this pamphlet that I read. It was on how to contact and talk to somebody.
Just don't show up at their house.
Don't show up their house. And there's other things like, okay, so when you're contacting your birth mother, number one, I am worried that I am going to destroy any kind of family that she has. Let's say she's remarried. She's never told anybody about me. Or she has children that are upset and angry. Like, you really want it to be a one-on-one personal conversation between the two of you. And you don't want anybody else to know. So you want to do that. Number two, the interesting thing, I don't know if you guys seen this, but when you get on TV and you're watching all of these adoption stories, I'm going to find my mother. You usually find an adoptee that makes a big mistake, and they think that their mother or father is going to change their life.
Can't wait to see you.
Right. And that they're going to, like, they have a bad life right now and everything's going to be good as soon as I meet mom or dad. And typically what ends up happening is these people are, they gave you up for a reason. Either they didn't have money, they made bad choices, they might be on drugs, alcoholic, they might have a terminal disease, or they're just jerks. Right?
Well, and mentally, you have to close the book. You can't keep thinking about that child for 25 years.
Yeah.
That's not good health for you mentally, right?
Of course.
So you've given up the child. Might be tough for the first couple of years, but you've moved on and you have a different life.
Exactly.
You're not thinking about it usually. It's
there's a
out
lot
of sight,
hope.
out of mind.
I wonder what they're doing now. That's about it. Right?
Maybe once in a while.
Yeah. Well, on the birthday, I would guess. Every birthday, right? You
That's probably
go,
true.
God, I wonder what's going on with them.
Yeah.
So I didn't make that mistake. I wasn't looking for her to fulfill my life. I wasn't looking for...
You were looking to get your ex-wife off your back.
Yeah, pretty much, right?
Well, and you had a good mother and father.
Right. I had a good
Growing
mother.
up.
And then throw in the fact that my mother, when I was, I don't know, in middle school or maybe high school, she had said, I would be really hurt if you looked for your real mother. And that had always been in the back of my mind. Like, my mom didn't say things like that typically. So I don't know if she had a weak moment or whatever it was, but it did throw in my back of my mind. I was like, okay, well, I don't want to hurt her feelings and have some sort of relationship with, and it doesn't matter because she didn't raise me. Like, I get all this, but of course, curiosity. You want to know and all that stuff. So I took all of the things that I knew from the organization, and then I called her, and with my own thoughts and my own feelings about the whole thing, and I gave her a call, and her name was Karen, as we talked about.
Do you remember where you were when you made the call?
Of course, yeah. I was in a condo that I lived in, and it was in the kitchen because we still didn't have cell phones. I mean, I was on the kitchen wall phone calling her.
And was your wife right next to you?
And she was right next to me.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and she, wanted to know what's going on. By the way, in this organization, they said don't expect to have a positive meeting because most of the meetings over the phone can turn into a negative experience, which I thought was weird.
No, awkward. Very awkward.
Yeah, I was like, okay, so I'm pumping myself up for a negative experience, right?
Yeah. You're sitting there making a pie watching Matlock and I get a call. I'm your son.
Right.
Wait, what? It's the last thing I was expecting.
That happens to me all the time.
Calling right in the middle of the basketball game. What?
So I grab the phone and I call in and it's like, I'm very, very focused on, I want to just talk to her one-on-one, like I said. And when the phone answers, a young girl's voice answers the phone. Hello? And I'm like, okay, this has got to be your daughter or something like that. So I said, is Karen there? And she was like, this is Karen. It was my mom. And so I was like, oh shit, I didn't have the next thing planned because I thought this was her daughter. So I made up a last name and I said, is this Karen McGillicuddy? I swear to God I used McGillicuddy because I knew... I don't know what I was thinking. Karen McGillicuddy? And she was like, oh, no, this isn't Karen. Oh, sorry, I got the wrong number. And I hung up like a 12-year-old.
Now all the listeners understand why we have to edit this again and again and again.
Yeah.
Did your ex-wife hit you over the head with the phone?
She was just like, what happened? What are you doing? I was like, it was her. And I said McGillicuddy. Ah! You know, so I was like, I do not know what's happening. I was like, okay. I am going to call her back. I'm just going to, because now I know her voice.
That's not awkward.
Yeah.
Hello.
I know.
Did you change your voice?
No. So I call her back. And
Right away, you called her back.
Right away, pretty much. I mean, within 30 seconds. Let's just put it that
Oh,
way.
my
Enough to go
gosh.
like to my her name's Emily. And I was like, I don't know what to do, you know. So I go, okay, I'm just going to call her again because I know her voice. I wanted to get her now because I knew the voice.
You are insane. I would have waited a couple days at that point. I just said Karen McGillicuddy and hung up. I would have waited at least 3 days.
I know. I don't know. But so anyway, so I pick up the phone. I'm sure my wife at the time was just like, "You're a chicken." I don't know. So anyway, I pick up the phone, call her one more time. And I said, is Karen there? She's like, well, this is Karen. She's already been through this. And then I basically said something along the lines where my name is Bill and I was born Thomas Michael. I was born on this day. And
Your real name is Tom.
my real name
Thomas.
was first Thomas Michael. Yeah.
Tommy Michael.
And you can just call me Tommy.
I'm going to call you Tommy all the time now.
And then I said, I am adopted and my search has led me to you. And then you're just supposed to shut up. My search has led me to you. And she just goes, and then her first words to me were, you don't smoke, do you? I swear to God. And I'm just like,
The first thing your real mother asks you is if you smoke.
yeah, she's like, you don't smoke. And I'm like, what kind of a thing? I mean, she obviously recognized who I was, right? But then that's her first question. Like, now I've met her and I know her and it's like, she smokes. And I think especially at that time, she had a lot of guilt going on with her smoking. I think she just wanted the best for me and she didn't want me to smoke, but
I
I'm
wonder
sure
if she was a
shocked.
smoker when she was pregnant. Because
Maybe.
Because learning later, when you smoke when you're pregnant, there might be some kind of habitual habit.
Yeah, and she might be thinking that too. I don't know.
It would have been better if she said, no, my name's McGillicuddy, and hung up.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, no, actually, my adopted parents were both big time chain smokers. Okay, I lived in a ashtray most of my life. That might have been the only negative.
Okay,
thing,
I want to
right?
be clear. Their house was immaculate.
Oh,
It just-
very
it just
immaculate.
smelled
My
like
house was the
cigarette.
same. Everybody in the 70s was smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We would take breaks at opening Christmas presents to go outside and have a cigarette.
exactly. Yeah, my adopted parents would smoke in the car, smoke inside.
Oh, yeah,
everything.
everywhere.
You know, so, but again, they didn't know back then. They didn't know.
No, they
Doctors-
knew. They just didn't care.
Doctors said it was okay, James.
People didn't shame you like they do now.
Exactly. That's true.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So we ended up having a very long, positive conversation. And she had told me, so that guy in the non-identifying information, she ended up marrying him and having 2 daughters. So I had 2 sisters that I discovered, right?
So not Philip Arthur Thompson. She married the other guy.
She married another
The
guy.
reason she gave you up was because the other guy didn't want to raise another child.
Right. So I had 2 half sisters that I learned about, and she was remarried to another guy, and she wants to meet. But ironically, she was having a hysterectomy surgery the next day. So she was going to have to recover from that, and she wanted to wait about, a month or so. So 1 month later on St. Patrick's Day, we go to her house. She was living in Santa Rosa, California.
Okay.
And I got to meet her and her then husband and both of my half sisters, which was really amazing.
How old were they at the time?
They were younger than me, so I was probably 26, 27, so they were probably 23, 24,
Okay.
somewhere along those lines.
Okay.
So-
That's like what? They weren't teens?
No. Yeah, we're all fairly close. Really.
Okay.
And I do remember looking in the oldest of the 2 sisters and just looking in her eyes and thinking, those are my eyes. Like, this is crazy. Like,
McGillicuddy?
yeah. So interesting enough, she never told anybody about that. Now, she told the first husband, right? But her second husband, she never told. And it wasn't a big secret. If you knew her, she's just really mellow and chill. And so she
Not something you go telling people all the time.
No. And
Oh, I'm into golf and I like swimming. And by the way, I gave up my son for adoption.
I know, but I would, like, if I had given up a kid for adoption or something, I'd be telling future partners. It would just be my story, my life, you know, and just to prepare them in case somebody's knocking on the door one day. So I don't know. That's just me. But the daughters didn't know. My sisters did not know. So she's just hilarious because she was in the hospital with her hysterectomy. She had the girls come in and she did it in a funny way. She said something like, ladies, I need to tell you something really serious. And they're like, yeah, I have another man in my life. And they were like, oh no, you're cheating on our stepfather. Like, what's happening? And then she's like, no, I had a son. And they were thrilled to know that they had a big brother. As a matter of fact, they call me Big Brother. And they love the fact that they have a big brother. It's like really, really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Are you shorter than them?
No. What are you talking about?
Can they pin you in wrestling?
Probably.
Are they more athletic?
Yeah. No, this is not an athletic family.
All right.
However, now we start talking about nurture and nature and that kind of stuff. And I instantly recognize, because people tell me that I'm pretty chill and I'm laid back. And my whole family is really chill, really laid back. We're accepting of everybody. Everybody loves everybody. And we're all just, it's like we really get along very, very well.
Well, that would be both your families.
Oh, yeah. And my adopted family.
Phil and Charlene were very chill and laid back.
Exactly.
And so was your sister.
Yeah.
That was adopted. And then your biological family is chill and laid back.
Exactly. So here I am in 1996. All of a sudden, I had this small family where I had a sister who was adopted, and she's like, we grew up together. And then I had two other sisters, a new mom. It's like, and it was really exciting. And then we did a St. Patrick's Day anniversary. We'd always get together on St. Patrick's Day because that's when we met.
Cool.
And, you know, it was just like a nice little tradition that we did for, I don't know, maybe 20 years.
Did you share a cigarette?
No, I did not.
Did you at least have a beer on St. Patrick's Day?
Well, I did.
That'd be a no.
Her husband, by the way, was a little
Irish?
bit. He might have been, actually. He was an old school guy from Nebraska, and we were having chicken at their house. But he was the kind of guy that had chickens cooped, and I feel like he killed those chickens that morning and fried them up, and we were eating fresh chicken that
Yummy.
night. You know, so it was
How do you
like-
not know that?
Well, I didn't. I mean, it just looked.
You were showing the girls your DJ skills?
Yeah, I was like, yeah. Wiki.
You weren't out helping chop up the chickens?
No, I'm saying that he did it in the morning, and then when I got there, it was already being prepared.
That takes some athleticism, especially with an axe.
That's true.
So then that's how I met my mother, right? So, and we still have as a matter of fact, today, all three of them are in England. They're traveling together.
Nice.
And all that stuff. So they are amazing women. All of the women in my life, amazing women. So, and we still get along today. So then there comes the conversations later where we are talking about, well, what about dear old dad? We didn't really address it on the first day that we met. Okay. But then we started having a relationship and we started going down that road. And so she told me as much as she knew. She knew that his name was Philip Arthur Thompson. I don't even know if she knew the middle name, to be honest, but she knew that his name was Philip Thompson. And sometimes he would go by Philip Hart. And so it was like, oh, okay. And it was like, so was he in jail? And yeah. And as far as I know, he was still in jail. And she didn't really know if he was in or out of jail at that point in time.
How did they meet?
Oh, this is fun. So how they met was apparently she was in a diner and he walked in with a friend and they both looked at each other and they said, we want to date that girl. So they literally flipped a coin to see which guy got to approach my mom, right? And he won the coin flip.
Was that his pickup line? That was his story?
Yeah, I'm sure he was charming, right?
Yeah, that's his story.
So you're telling me a twist of fate, luck of the flip, brought you to life.
Just like La Bamba. Yeah. It's like the flip of the coin when they get on the plane or they don't get on the plane. Yeah, it's kind of weird. And that is definitely the story. So a couple of years go by, and Emily, my wife at the time, is saying, well, we need to see your dad too. We need to see who he is.
Because you're chicken.
Yeah, yeah. And at that point, I mean, I really didn't have a big desire because I found my mom, everything's cool. And she had told me, I said, well, what about meeting him? And she's like, well, I want to warn you. He is very charismatic. He is very intelligent, but don't believe a word he says.
And how does she know that from her experience if they only went out once or twice?
At the age of 21.
That was her experience. I mean, I don't know if they went out once or twice, but I think it was like a thing for a couple, like maybe a month.
So that answers so many questions. Charismatic, good looking, very intelligent, confident, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's 21. Of course he's
But
confident.
that answers the whole question about why, for example, in episode 1, we talked about Betty Clore just meets this random guy, but if he's that good.
Right. Charming.
I get
all
it.
that stuff,
I
right?
totally get
Tall,
it.
dark, and handsome.
Yeah. Oh, and so the other things that she told me about him is that, you know, he was clean cut and he wore a Letterman's sweater, not a jacket, but a sweater. He wore a Letterman sweater and he was very charming and stuff like that. But when she had told him that he had a baby, that she was pregnant, he said, I could care less. And he stopped it and he wanted nothing to do with it. And then she found out later that he was married. And so, and or he said he was separated and he wasn't, one of those two, right? And then by coincidence, which is a weird coincidence, but it's Santa Rosa, it's still a smaller town at the time, right? Back in the 60s. She happened to be working at J.C. Penney, and by coincidence, she found out that she's working with his mom. So she could kind of keep up on what he was doing. And by another weird coincidence, he had a kid. He had a son. My father did. And he ended up dying at 4 years old, right around the same time, of some disease. He didn't murder him, but he died of some disease. And my mom happened to walk into like a headstone shop and saw the headstone and knew. And it's like, who walks into a headstone shop?
Nobody.
I don't know why she was there to this day. I should ask her about that. But
Yes.
she was just like, I just happened to see it. And then I realized it was him. And so I had an older brother who had died. Right. So
I
there's
can't
that.
even find a headstone shop if I had to, my life depended on it.
Exactly. Try finding a headstone shop, like just randomly. I don't know.
I bet in Santa Rosa there's 3.
Maybe so, but why would you go to one if you're, 21 years old? Why would you be there?
no idea.
I don't know. I don't know.
That does seem random.
So it is. So these are random things that she knew, but this was all she knew, really.
That makes me even more skeptical of the coin story, that he was married at the time. That makes me even more skeptical.
Interesting. And what happened to the
That
friend?
he even said that he might have made that up.
And the
right?
friend just turns around and walks out of the diner or orders a burger and sits to the side.
Who knows? I don't even know. Like,
Yeah.
and
It's good, but I'm skeptical.
right. But that is what the story is.
Yeah.
Right. So now we're on a half-assed journey to find my dear old dad, who I knew was in jail. So it's like, why do I even want to contact this guy? But my wife at the time was.
So when was the
continuous.
last time your mother had contact with him at that time?
67. After she got
So
pregnant.
she knew he was in jail in 67.
Yes. Knew he was in jail for check fraud.
Which is probably how she found out he's in jail, is from the grandma.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right?
that's
'Cause
probably what it was.
That's
yeah.
probably what it was, because she told him pregnant. He's like, go away.
Right.
And they probably never had contact. She probably found out from your grandma
Exactly.
that he was in jail.
And again, he's living in Santa Rosa. So there you go.
Okay.
And I know that later he gets out of jail and moves to Sacramento, not too far from that. Now, my wife at the time was like, can I find him? Can I find him? Can I find him? And I was like, at some point I was like, yeah.
Did you never take your wife out? It sounds like she was very bored.
Yeah, she was bored. Now we have a few more kids, right? And it's like, go ahead, see if you can find him. And she couldn't find him. We don't know that if he's in jail. We don't know anything. And she took a couple of weeks. And then what ended up happening is she found his first wife, which, remember, we have this documentary, right? The documentary is how we started doing this whole podcast. Even the researchers on this documentary didn't know that he had this wife. Okay. So This wife's name was Billy. She found Billy, her phone number and her
This is the
contact
wife
information.
that Philip Arthur Thompson supposedly cheated on with your
Correct.
mom.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So I call her up, and when I call her up, I kind of give the same vibe of the
McGillicuddy?
Oh, is this Billy McGillicuddy?
Well, I wasn't as nervous because, like, I'm not her son. I'm not the secret, right? I'm not a secret here. So it wasn't that as big of a deal, I didn't think. And so when I call her up and I say, hey, I am the son and of Philip Thompson. And she immediately starts to cry and just bawl her eyes out. And I'm thinking, what is going on here? Like, this is crazy, right? And so I'm trying to figure out, like, why is she so emotional about this situation? And as it turns out, Billy had a son with another guy, not with Philip. And he had turned 18. And when he turned 18, he decided to go to Australia with some friends to celebrate him graduating from high school. And they got in a car wreck and he died.
Jeez.
Okay? So now she's lost 2 sons because she lost the first one.
Yep.
And then she just lost her 18-year-old. And she just broke down and cried and started crying. And so she said, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I don't mean to do this to you and put it on to you. But, I lost 2 sons, and this guy doesn't deserve to have a son. He's a horrible person. And as I talked to her, I probably talked to her for at least an hour, hour and a half, something like that.
You're like, wrong number, crank call.
I'm just kidding. And it was honestly, I'm just going to say that I felt like I needed to call her because part of it was like a lot of therapy. I don't know if it helped or not, but I felt like I was really helping her along. But me, it ended this way. So she said, well, same thing. Just so you know, I want to warn you of something. He is very charismatic and he is very intelligent, but don't believe a word he said.
Well, it's the second person to tell you that.
Oh, yeah. And I'm telling you, it wasn't exactly word for word, but almost word for word. I'm not kidding. And I was like, whoa, okay, I get it. He's a liar. Okay. And he's smart. So she said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to call his mother and I'm going to find out if it's okay that I can give the number out. And if it is, I'll call you back and let you know.
This is the mother that worked at JCPenney.
Exactly.
Got it.
Right?
Your grandma.
My grandma, her name was Thelma Hart. Okay. So, and she was the one who owned that
White
Oldsmobile.
Oldsmobile.
There you go. So a couple days go by and I get a call back from Billy and say, here's her name. Her name is Thelma, but she goes by Jerry. I think it is Jerry. I'm just telling you.
Of course.
Maybe a middle name?
The connection
Maybe.
there makes sense.
Yeah. So I give my grandmother a call and she was really nice and she was talking to me about it and she's just like very apologetic for her own son. She's like, well, I just want to let you know that, Phil, he is in jail right now. And I was like, wow, still? And I'm thinking, I guess this guy just went from, bouncing checks to something else. And she started to say stuff, well, Phil has had his, moments where, maybe his mental moments where he's had problems, mentally, something along those lines. And I was like, okay. She's like, well, and I can give you, his information and where he's at and what jail he's in if you want. And I was like, okay. Why don't we do that? And she gives me all the information. And then she says, well, I just want you to know that when you talk to him, not everything's going to be true.
Don't trust.
And I was just like, what? Okay, his own mother is telling me this. I get the women who were, mad at the guy, but even
Because he's a
his own mother,
shyster.
he is a shyster. So I got the warnings from all 3 women who really knew this guy, so I got it. Okay. This is going to be interesting. So I got all the information and then I definitely sat on that for a while too.
Where was he at that point?
So he was in a small correctional institution called Jamestown.
Yep.
And it was it's one of those light security.
Minimum security.
Minimum security. Thank you. So he was in there. So I was like, okay. And she called him. And I think he had to put in for my information too, like tell the institution, say, hey, I've got a guy who's going to be calling. So they sent me information and I had to get a background check and all this other stuff to call him.
You're not bringing in 10 pounds of cocaine into the jail.
Right. And so we tried a phone call, and I don't know how we scheduled it out or whatever, but I think he called me. And I don't know if you guys ever received a call from an institution. Have you?
Yes.
Okay.
Where it's recorded at the beginning.
Right. And it was your mom that you were talking about, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Your mom was in jail?
Oh, my mom's been in and out of jail for like years.
What is going on in Mount Shasta where you people
No,
are?
that's a joke. I'm kidding.
He's kidding.
But no, it would come in and say, hello, this is San Quentin Federal Prison. We have an inmate, Philip Arthur Thompson, who would like to speak with you. If you'd like to speak to Philip Arthur Thompson, please press 1.
Perfect. And the funny thing about this is that it doesn't just stop there. At least with this institution, every 20 seconds, you're in the middle of a conversation and that pops up and you're like, I am distracted right now.
Everything's recorded too.
Yeah. And everything's recorded and it'll have boops and beeps, brrr, boop, beep, and you're just like, what the heck? I can't even have a good conversation here. So I meet him. He is really nice. And he was very, very happy to know that he had a son. And he was like, I didn't even know that I had a son. This is amazing. This is so great. Like, he was really excited.
Do you have a file?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Can you bring me some cheese?
What's the first thing you said to him and he said back to you?
You know what? I don't remember.
You didn't say McGillicuddy.
I think it was basically along those lines. He calls me. Of course, we already know that I'm his son.
Yeah.
And he was just like, I didn't know I had a son. This is such great news. And of course, if you're in jail, that is anything hopeful, family.
Well, and you
girlfriend.
said it multiple times. You can't trust him anyway.
No, you can't trust him. And let me just say, I'll just say this now. I went back and relayed this conversation to my mother, my birth mother. And she's like, well, that's the first lie he told you. Because of course he knew. She told him, right? So, and I didn't believe him, but at the same time, I'm just taking him for what he's worth. So we get on the phone and we talk about many things, religion. He instantly wanted to know if I was religious or if my wife was religious. And I mentioned I'm not a real religious guy, but I mentioned my wife's religion. He's like, well, that's not true at all. Nothing is true. And I've read all of the books and none of them are true. And so
I like him already.
Right. And guess what? We, like James and I are very agnostic, right?
Correct.
And I agree with that too, but it really gave me a red flag.
You think?
Because I was just like, well, you don't know where I'm coming from. You don't know where my wife's coming from. And at this point, you're trying to build rapport and you don't care.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me.
That's the first insight.
It's the second.
Not saying if you're agnostic, you don't have a moral code, but it's the first insight into him when he says, I've read all the books and none of them are true.
Right. Exactly.
So that tells me you're justifying something or you don't have a moral code.
Or he's a big reader.
Damn it. I don't have a moral code. Shit.
So, and now I'm kind of paraphrasing throughout 2 different phone calls that I've had with him.
Was your ex-wife on the other line?
No.
Was she taking furious notes?
No. And as a matter of fact, I really don't even remember if she was in the room. She might have been. She probably was. I'm sure she was.
After all that pressure, I would hope she was.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I'm in my new house and I'm talking on the phone in the kitchen because there's no cell phones, right? So he told me why he was in jail. Well, first of all, he told me a number of things, which were all kind of random. So number 1, he told me it was his idea for the advertising campaign of Safe and Sane Fireworks. Okay. Now, I don't know if this is a nationwide thing, but it's definitely a California thing. So back in the 70s, everybody realized that California is really a hotbed of weeds and everything's going to light up on fire. So we don't want really bad fireworks. We want these safe and sane fireworks, which are just like mutated, horrible, dumbed down fireworks that we have here, right?
The irony of a serial killer telling you, I created safe and sane.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So he told me that, and which I thought, well, how could this be a lie? I mean, I know he's a liar, but why would you just lie about that? That's kind of interesting. So, and more on that later, by the way. He told me he was the manager of a band, which was the band Steel Breeze. Do you know Steel Breeze?
I've heard of Steel Breeze.
So their big one-hit wonder was You Don't Want Me Anymore in the 1980s. I love that song, and coincidentally, it was the very first concert I ever went to, was Steel Breeze.
Dude, what the heck is going on?
The ironies of this story.
I know, it's so weird. He also said the reason why he was in jail. And he was talking and he started to tell me the story. And the story was that he had a friend who owned an Oriental rug company. And this friend and him made a deal, which he would hijack the truck with Oriental rugs on it. And then he would sell the Oriental rugs on the black market. And his buddy who owned the Oriental rugs would go to the insurance company and get the insurance money, and then the two of them would split all the proceeds and they'd make some money. He was very, very proud of this. And he told me, well, I ended up getting caught because I took the driver with me. And then he downplays the whole thing. He says, well, you know, I had a gun, of course, and it's like, and I tied the guy up, but he even admitted later in court that I wasn't rough with him or anything like that.
You gotta make it look real.
Yeah. Well, no, the guy driving the truck wasn't in on it.
I get it, but you still got to make it look real. You can't just go up to the guy in the truck and go, I'm going to stop you right now and take all your rugs. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Here's my gun. You have to make it look real.
Yeah, you got to have a gun, right? And we'll find out that he definitely loves his guns.
Yes.
Right? So what he ended up doing, he's like, well, it was armed robbery with a gun. It was kidnapping because he kidnapped the guy when he did it, and then insurance fraud. And they got me with all of these counts. Plus I've had a couple of other light things like check writing and stuff. And at the time, so he's like, now I'm at a 3 strikes or you're out. And he was just waiting for the Democratic governor to become elected so that he felt like he was going to get pardoned or let out of jail or something like that.
Okay.
When he was talking to me about this, I could see the pride, like I'm cool. I'm really neat. So I didn't want to let him feel pride about something that was not a good deed. I didn't want to go, yeah, you got him, Dad. Yay, high five. Right, yeah. So I said something like, oh, you dork. Why would you do something like that? I kind of kept it kind of even, but it was a little admonishing. And when I did that, his tone changed. He was just like,
you called him a dork.
Yeah, well, I didn't do that, and he didn't like that I called him a dork, and that, why was I questioning him that he did that? He was super proud of this. So his tone changed with me. The phone call kind of ended. That might have been the first phone call. In a subsequent phone call, he, like I told him that I was in a vocal band at the time, so I had just released a CD. So I sent him the CD. Just the cover of it. He couldn't play it. And he sent me a picture of himself. So I was like, oh, great. I'm going to see what he looked like. He's like, it's an older picture and everything like this. The picture he sends me is him on a motorcycle with a Doberman by his side. And he's looking down, so all I can see is the top of his head. I can't even see his face. I'm just like, but he looked long and lanky, and he looked like he had really long hair. And I'm just like, okay, well, there's my dad's top of his head. Okay.
This is great. Great
the
Doberman.
Irony is the Doberman was named McGillica.
Yeah. So he really wanted this picture back, by the way. I guess if you're in prison and you only have 5 pictures, you want it back. So I ended up sending it back to him, and he had wrote me a little letter like, I can't believe this is exciting, blah, blah, blah. And then that was like, okay, I got 2 phone calls in, and when he was talking to me about the religion thing, I had kind of decided in my head, maybe I shouldn't be talking to him anymore.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't talk to grandma either. I don't want this to get weird. And
Too late.
Sure, grandma's an old lady and everything, but she's not calling me. I mean, she got my number too, so I was like, oh, okay. And then what I think ended up happening was I went out on a date. I had little kids and stuff like that with my wife, and her mother came over, and she got a phone call. She did not know any of this stuff. She did not know about it because we kind of kept things under wraps. And she got a phone call from him, and it was like from the prison, all the recording that you talk about. This is an inmate calling.
Boy, I bet
Philip Arthur Thompson called your wife's mother?
No, he called the house.
He called the house while my mother-in-law is
Got it.
babysitting my kids.
I'm
Sorry.
sure your mother-in-law loved that.
Well, she didn't understand. She just picked it up, and it's like, if you do not want to accept this phone call ever again, hit 1. And she was like, well, fuck this. And she hit 1. And that's we were like, I wonder why we're not getting any phone calls, because he pretty much had to call us. And so it was like, at least I think that's how it worked. And so we were like, okay, well, he's not calling us. I'm not going to go out and call him. I have no desire to go to the jailhouse and see him. And there's one other thing that happened in the phone call. He was talking to me on the phone, and he got real scared because he's like, I gotta go. Cause he's like, there's a big black guy that wants to use the phone. He tells me. And so that's odd, because everything we know about him, he's intimidating. He's big. He's a big guy. But at this point now he's in his 50s, and there must have been some big young buck there that wanted to kick his butt.
It's also jailhouse. There could have been a crew. He's outnumbered.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know exactly what it was, but I could hear fear in his voice.
Yeah.
And so he went away. Well, I found out later, because I did talk to his mom one more time, that he had gotten into some sort of scuffle and he had lost his front tooth. He was in a scuffle. I do not know exactly what happened, but
Who says scuffle? It's a
Grandma.
It's a full-on bar brawl.
It's a
jail
McGillicuddy
fight.
scuffle.
I mean, seriously, it's
Yeah.
a full-on jail fight.
so she had told me, the grandma had said, oh, well, he's really insecure about losing that front tooth right now. And, that kind of stuff. And that's, that's pretty much all I remember. But my mother-in-law put the nail in the coffin as far as that relationship goes. Why? Pressing the 1.
And how long before you found that out? Months?
Months later.
Yeah.
Because it just came up in conversation with my wife and
Yeah.
You got a call from the prison.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's that going on? And she was like, and we didn't say anything else because we were keeping things under wraps. But, Emily, my wife at the time, was like, I think my mom hit the button and that's what's going on. It's like, okay, good. I was like, that's great. Yeah, I didn't have to do it. I can, whatever. So that is how I met my mother and my biological father.
The only thing I'm really curious about, though, is that your wife wanted to do all this to get the health for your newborn son and the history of that. Did that ever happen?
It never even came up. Oh, well, I think she did have a little conversation. Is there anything in the family? And la, la, la. My birth mother is so laid back. I don't know. Well, my grandmother, who died early, had mental problems and circulatory problems.
Always some in some family.
Exactly. Everybody's got somebody that's,
Yeah.
So that was about it. And so we really didn't get any amazing thing like there's cancer or anything like that in the family. So
That's not really the end of the story.
Oh,
with,
no.
with Bill's extended family either.
No, there is so much more, but that is not for episode 2. That is for later on in this podcast.
When things really get crazy.
And it's really going to get crazy for sure.
We're being lighthearted on this one because we don't have the ability to be lighthearted on the rest.
Right. Yeah. It's so nice to be able to talk with lightheartedness. This is us. This is who we are. Right. But when you're talking about a murder, we got to be a little more somber about things.
Well, some of us do.
And respectful.
Right. Exactly. So, yeah. So this is my story of the adoption. It's a crazy story, but it gets even crazier.
So buckle up.
And we're going to do this. See you next time.